It's okay, guys. The fire is 93% contained. We can all go home now, right? HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. What if I told you 93% of U.S. weather is non-violent? What if I said 93% of deaths worldwide are not caused by respiratory diseases? How about this? Over 93% of food poisoning is non-fatal. Over 93% of U.S. roadway accidents are also non-fatal. Over 93% of beer bug cases are non-fatal. Over 93% of beer bug fatality reports include comorbid conditions listed as contributing causes. Over 93% of murder victims who are black are not shot to death by police. Guess we can wave goodbye to the woke part of the audience. Now let's talk about the Mott and Bailey fallacy and why it doesn't matter why 93% of any pressure group's protests are non-violent. The Mott and Bailey fallacy is a kind of intellectual bait and switch in which a debater presents an easily defensible argument as representative of a more broad, less defensible position in order to limit your ability to criticize that position. The goal is to get the opponent to accept the more defensible argument, then move the goalpost to the less defensible position in hopes of convincing you that you've actually agreed to that. The media uses the claim that 93% of recent Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests are non-violent as a shield against criticism of the biggest incidents in several cities where the violence has been ongoing, highly destructive, and often extreme. The argument relies on the assumption that the violent events, which are huge and involve agitators traveling to their location from across the country, are recharacterized and redeemed by the peaceful ones, which are generally smaller, locally organized, and locally attended, but those are not recharacterized and tainted by the riots. Supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement cannot effectively defend the position that it's a non-violent movement because that violent 7% of its activities has left protest routes in targeted cities looking like war zones where bombs had been dropped. The entire country has seen images of that destruction. This violence is being used as an intimidation tactic. The underlying threat is that if the movement's demands are not met, there will be more violence. If an abuser hit you a couple of times to intimidate you into doing something she wanted but was non-violent 93% of the time, would that make it wrong to call her abusive? Would it make her demands any more valid? Why should we accept the admonition that 93% of recent racial injustice protests are non-violent as an argument against criticizing either the incredibly destructive 7% or the Marxist demand list presented by the official leadership of Black Lives Matter? Cue feminist lurkers in men's rights forums everywhere.
How is this a men's rights issue?
Our opponents use Mott and Bailey arguments as a way of defending agitation for a law, policy, and social standards that disadvantage men and boys for the purported benefit of women and girls. Due process rights are attacked in this manner. The idea that victims of intimate partner violence and sex crimes deserve compassion is used as the stronghold from which to protect demands that these areas of law should be exceptions to a defendant's right to a presumption of innocence. If you agree that victims deserve compassion, you're presumed to have agreed that accusers deserve automatic belief, and you can't then argue that the accused have any right to a defense because that would mean you don't believe victims, you misogynistic brute. The feminist movement uses misandric rhetoric and engages in organized, heavily funded pressure campaigns for anti-male discriminatory law and policy, which that rhetoric is used to support. They retreat from criticism of this to the safe haven of presuming feminism to be an equality movement. And if you question that, there's a dictionary definition they'd like to show you. What kind of giant ignoramus would argue with a dictionary definition? Concede the definition, and you've lost, because now you cannot attribute any of feminism's lobbying to feminists, even when it's done by self-identifying feminist organizations like the National Organization for Women. As a result, you cannot disagree with the feminist argument that men are to blame for all discrimination against men because if feminists didn't do it, who else is there? After that, if you persist in criticizing misandric feminist rhetoric and the pressure campaigns it supports, you're obviously only saying that because you hate women. Do you disapprove when the biggest self-identifying feminist organization in the U.S. bolsters their opposition to equally shared parenting laws by arguing as if dads must be presumed deadbeats and abusers unless proven innocent? What a moron you are! How dare you attribute such positions to the feminists who published them? You don't even know what real feminism is. Educate yourself! This kind of tactic can be quite predatory. Each step in the logical progression of an argument involves a boundary. It's your process of deciding what concepts you consider valid and right, and which positions you are willing to accept. While it sometimes results from the debater's own incompetence, the Mott and Bailey trick is often an attempt to override your decision-making process, to get you to concede to an indefensible claim or give in to an indefensible demand without any real justification. Forget about external bodily autonomy. You're not even allowed to make up your own mind. Your betters are going to do that for you, even if they have to use mind games to contravene your refusal to agree to something you're not comfortable accepting. If you used that same trick to talk someone into buying your non-functioning three-pronged widgets, you'd be labeled a con artist. The same feminists who use it to downplay the behavior of female sexual predators would label you one if you used it to talk one of them into any kind of intimate activity. They're perfectly comfortable, though, using it to talk you out of defending your human rights when legal protections for them would get in the way of their organization's financial gains. Never mind the fact that their fundraising relies on male-demonizing narratives and their rhetoric has led to policies that throw abused men under the bus. Never mind that they've lobbied process law into place that cripples the defense of wrongly accused men in gender violence cases. You gotta remember what they claim to stand for. Surely, you, as an enlightened modern gentleman, can't criticize their grift. After all, those organizations are feminist, and feminism is only about equality for women. What kind of misogynist would oppose that, right? This week, HBR Talk is going to discuss advocating for men's issues in an arena where our critics rely on Mott and Bailey arguments to promote their agenda. How can we consistently identify and disarm that snare? We stream on multiple platforms. You can tune into the live stream on YouTube via the link in the low bar, or find other viewing and listening options on badgerfeed.com.